The Real-Life Horror of Issei Sagawa, The Cannibal Who Walked Free. The story of Issei Sagawa, known as the Kobe cannibal, is one of the most horrifying and perplexing cases in modern criminal history. In 1981, Sagawa, a Japanese student studying in Paris, brutally murdered and cannibalized a fellow student, René Hartevelt. Despite the gruesome nature of his crime, Sagawa was never imprisoned for his actions, and he has remained free, living in Japan ever since. His case has fascinated and disturbed people around the world, as it raises profound questions about justice, mental illness, and the nature of evil. Early life of Issei Sagawa. Issei Sagawa was born on April 26, 1949, in Kobe, Japan, into a wealthy and privileged family. From a young age, Sagawa was frail and sickly, which made him feel inadequate and isolated. He was also extremely small in stature, standing at only 4 feet 9 inches, 145 centimeters, as an adult. Sagawa later claimed that his fantasies of cannibalism began as early as elementary school, where he developed a fascination with Western women, whom he viewed as tall, beautiful, and unattainable. As he grew older, his cannibalistic fantasies became more vivid and intertwined with his sexual desires. Despite these disturbing thoughts, Sagawa pursued an education, eventually enrolling at Wako University in Tokyo, where he studied literature. However, his dark fantasies persisted, and he eventually moved to Paris to continue his education at the Sorbonne, one of France's most prestigious universities. The murder of René Hartevelt on June 11, 1981, Issei Sagawa committed one of the most horrific crimes imaginable. He befriended René Hartevelt, a 25-year-old Dutch woman studying at the Sorbonne, and invited her to his apartment under the pretext of working on an academic project. Hartevelt, a bright and promising student, had no idea that Sagawa had been harboring fantasies of killing and eating her. While Hartevelt was reading a poem aloud, Sagawa shot her in the neck with a rifle, killing her instantly. After her death, Sagawa's gruesome act of cannibalism began. Over the next 2 days, he dismembered her body and consumed various parts of it, focusing primarily on her thighs and buttocks, which he had long fetishized. He photographed the process and documented it in detail. Sagawa later described the act of cannibalism as fulfilling a lifelong obsession, saying that he viewed it as a way to absorb her beauty and become one with her. After several days, Sagawa decided to dispose of the remaining body parts. He placed them in 2 suitcases and attempted to dump them in a Bois de Boulogne park, a popular area on the outskirts of Paris. However, his strange behavior and the blood leaking from the suitcases aroused suspicion, and he was quickly apprehended by the French police. The trial and psychiatric evaluation. After his arrest, Sagawa readily confessed to the murder and cannibalism of René Hartevelt. He showed no remorse, even describing the details of his crime with chilling calmness. During his trial, Sagawa's defense team argued that he was mentally ill and unfit to stand trial. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and declared legally insane by French psychiatrists. In 1983, after 2 years of incarceration in France, Sagawa was deemed unfit to stand trial and was committed to a psychiatric hospital. However, the French legal system eventually decided to deport Sagawa to Japan, where he would continue his treatment. Upon his return to Japan, however, the case took a shocking turn. Release and life in Japan. When Sagawa arrived in Japan, Japanese authorities quickly realized they could not legally prosecute him for the murder of René Hartevelt. The French court documents had been sealed, and without the necessary evidence, the Japanese courts were unable to pursue charges. To the shock and outrage of many, Sagawa was released from a Japanese psychiatric hospital within a matter of months, as Japanese doctors found him sane and did not believe he was a danger to society. Incredibly, Sagawa walked free, and he has lived in Japan as a free man ever since. This development caused international outrage, as many believed that justice had not been served for Renee Hartevelt and her family. Public attention and media career. Far from living in obscurity after his release, Sagawa became something of a celebrity in Japan, profiting off the infamy of his crime. He wrote several books about his experience and the act of cannibalism, and he even became a guest on talk shows, where he discussed the murder in disturbing detail. His book, titled In the Fog, graphically described the murder and his cannibalistic desires. He also worked as a food critic for a brief time, adding a macabre layer to his post-crime life. Sagawa's ability to capitalize on his horrific crime only deepened the controversy surrounding his case. Many people were appalled by the media attention he received, and the lack of consequences for his actions, particularly given the brutal nature of Renee Hartevelt's death. Legacy and impact. The case of Issei Sagawa raises difficult questions about mental illness, criminal justice, and the role of the media in sensationalizing violence. Despite the extreme brutality of his crime, Sagawa was able to avoid any real punishment, and later exploited his notoriety for financial gain. The murder of Renee Hartevelt, and the subsequent release of her killer have left a lasting scar on her family, who have never received justice for her death. Sagawa's continued presence in the public eye has been a source of pain for many, particularly given his lack of remorse. In interviews, he has expressed a mixture of regret and pride in his actions, at times acknowledging that he is disturbed, but also reveling in the infamy of his crime. Later life and decline. In recent years, Sagawa has lived a more reclusive life, struggling with health issues and financial difficulties. He has expressed a desire to die and has acknowledged the suffering he caused, though many remain skeptical of his sincerity. Despite his physical decline, Sagawa's case continues to captivate and horrify people around the world.